It's been a couple of days now since I did the before and after video and the walkthrough of the property. But what I wanted to do now was just some follow-up commentary talking about the entire deal from beginning to end. We've actually have it listed now for rent, so we've been getting quite a few calls and emails about the property from people that want to do applications. But I'll start off by saying I do most of these videos as a way to kind of self-track myself and just keep up from where I've been. I've done a video on my very first deal since doing wholesale real estate to the point now where I'm actually getting rental properties and holding property for myself. These videos are also just to help people who may be starting out. Some of these things they just might not know. So even just by following me, if you learn anything, or even if you just think it's good entertainment, please give the video a thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe. Now, for this property and the two others that I bought all three of those at a great price. So I was really excited to go ahead and get started with rehabbing these. But the very first one, and that's the smallest house that you just saw in the video, the little 960 square foot property, it started out bad. Now, in the past, in a couple of past videos, I've kind of talked about what went wrong with the rehab and dealing with a contractor who was not completely honest with me. And I talk about how this person was close to me, but to be honest, it goes a lot deeper than just that person being close to me. But I won't mention anything more about that because eventually you just have to forgive and forget and move on to the next step in your business. Now, I had done some rehab properties in the past, in the years maybe between 2008 to 2011, where I had done a flip before. I had owned up to 4 rental properties, so I'm not completely new to the game, but I had taken a break after I sold off my last rental properties. So starting over, I was really looking for a mentor as far as the rehab goes, somebody who had been doing rehab work, who owned rental properties themselves. So that's how I got in contact with the contractor that began on this house. Now, starting out, I was completely upfront with this person about my situation. I had a newborn who had just gotten here, and me and my wife, we were trying to go ahead and get these rentals going quick. So I was given a project time for about 3 weeks, possibly 4, just because there was quite a bit of work that needed to be done. But going through and actually getting the quotes on the property, a quote for doing the entire job, I got prices that were really, looking back on it, unrealistic. But again, being newer to the rehab game, I really didn't know what the price for this type of project should have been. I had an idea of what it should be, but this person had told me that they could get a bunch of discounts on supplies and that the rehab team was good and low cost, so he would be able to get everything done quick and for a low price. And I'll back up here and say a few years ago when I was doing rehab, I had a rehabber who was just, he did incredible work for a good price. So looking back on it, he probably kind of spoiled me because I would just tell him what I needed done. He would give me a good price on it, get everything done. No real hassle, no issues, and boom, next thing you know, we had a house that was ready to be moved in or a house that was ready to flip. But going back to the house that we just rehabbed, dealing with this contractor, I just got a bunch of misinformation up front that really could have set me up for failure because the prices weren't right. The promises that I got as far as the rehab and what I was expecting were never met. And one of the biggest things is that the work that was done was just done so slow to where I was losing money. Now, of course, this is an issue that may just not be addressed enough, but here in Memphis and really probably wherever you go where you just have a hot market or you have a bunch of rehab being done, you can get taken advantage of. All of them are not out meaning to do you well, even though you do have some great contractors out there. There are a lot of guys that are just really out here scamming people and trying to get some quick money, don't really plan on doing the job correctly or even finishing the job. And just to kind of give you an example of this, I'll post a video of a house contract that I sold maybe a year or so ago. The owner of the property had put a bunch of money into the house. The work wasn't being done, and the contractor basically got away with around $25,000. And this was an owner who was overseas, so a lot of the things that they should have been looking out for, they just didn't do. But it can really happen to anybody. And I was just talking to a few friends who have been in the game for a while, some around the same time that I've been in the game, and even some who have been doing this for years. But a buddy of mine who owns maybe 100 or so houses, 100+ houses, just contacted me about 3 of them that he had to go ahead and get sold because of bad contractors not doing the work that they were supposed to do and him losing money on the deals. And I was talking to a couple of friends on Facebook too who started out with wholesale real estate, and they're doing great in the game now, doing rehabs, flips, rental properties, and everything else. But starting out early on in their journey, they experienced some of the same things where they were taken advantage of with work that just wasn't being done correctly and money that was being paid out. But in my scenario, it was just different because this person is somebody who I grew up around, so I've had known them my entire life. And I really felt like we could have built a long-term working relationship to where I could keep churning out these deals to them, having them do them for me, and we could just really build that connection. But it didn't turn out that way. So some of the things that started out going wrong were I would ride by the house, and several days I would just not see anybody outside doing the work. So I would ride by in the morning to see if anybody was there. Nobody was. Ride around lunchtime, nobody there. Ride back in the evening, nobody there. And this would go on for maybe 2 or 3 days at a time until I just gave them a call and was like, hey, you know, what's going on with this, that, or the other? When is the paint supposed to be done? When is your electrician supposed to have everything done? He would get back to me, come in for a few days, make a decent showing, get some work done. But and then the exact same thing would happen again to where I just didn't see anybody on the site for a couple of days. I talk about quite a bit of the issues that I found that was wrong with the property while the work was being done. And I'll post a link to 2 of the videos where I show some of these things just for anybody who may be wanting to know some things that you should look for. But I found sheetrock that had been done incorrectly, windows that were placed in incorrectly, wrong sizes for the windows, vanities, just different things that were the wrong size, electrical that had not been complete with live wires that were inside the attic that really could have burnt the house down, plumbing that was done just not up to code. So if code enforcement had come in while that plumbing work had been done, they wouldn't have allowed me to turn on the utilities. But even after those issues, I went back after I did those last 2 videos and found more things like my heating unit being put in incorrectly. So by the time that first video was made, I had finally decided that enough is enough. And if I had waited any longer, I mean, really that deal could have broken me. But I had to go ahead and let him go just to save my business, and I had to bring in somebody else. And on this job, I actually had 3 contractors to come in. Now, the second contractor who came in to correct a lot of the issues that happened with the first contractor. Now, with the first contractor, I had to have everything more or less redone except for the roof. The roof was the only thing that had been done correctly. And the second contractor was actually getting the work done. But the thing about the second contractor is I hadn't heard from him in close to 3 or 4 days after I had been trying to call him to get some updates on a window that was supposed to be put in. But turns out, and I'm not even sure what the issue was, but this guy ended up in jail. So now I'm on my 3rd contractor. And as you can imagine, with dealing with 2 contractors who just weren't the best, by this point, I'm almost ready to give up. But mentally, it's something I just can't do. I'm so deep in the game now that it just wouldn't even make sense for me to go back, turn around, give up on the project or anything. So I had to figure out something quick so I can go ahead and get the project finished up. So the turning point in this rehab was when I decided to try to get in contact with the very first rehab guy that I had ever worked with. And this is the guy that I was telling you that I had been working with back in 2008, around that time. Now, we had lost contact after my last condo that he had rehab. Again, I had been out of the game for a while. The number that he had wasn't working. But what I did, and I really just did it on a prayer, hoping that he would answer, was called him on his old number that had been previously disconnected. And I'll never forget, the phone rang 2 times and he picked up. I instantly recognized his voice. I almost didn't know what to say because I was so excited to be getting back in contact with my guy. He told me he was ready to work, let him know what day I wanted him out there. He was there on the same day before I was there, already with his materials and everything ready to go. He gave me a great price on the phone a couple of days before, and by the time I got to the house, he had already been doing a bunch of work correcting issues that needed to be corrected again, and just finishing up the entire job. So the completed product was all because of my last contractor, who I will be using moving forward. Now, I'll talk about some of the things that shaped me with this last project, because somebody mentioned on one of my Facebook posts that this situation was probably something that I needed to go through just because of forced growth. So it did force me to grow. One thing I was able to do was get my dad involved in my business. He was a business owner for 45 years before he retired. So now he is the one that's kind of managing the subcontractors that I deal with. Also, moving forward, I will be acting as my own general contractor, me and my dad together. So we have our rehab guy that we had used back in the past. He's great with the jobs. We have a solid electrician, solid plumber, and a solid HVAC guy. So we have our team built. They give us pretty good prices. We save by being our own general contractor, and we're just going to keep moving forward with that team. Also, moving forward, another thing that we'll be doing is buying all of our own materials, because you actually do save money that way. And some other advice that I was given about dealing with subcontractors or contractors for that fact is don't pay a bunch of money up front. Don't pay money up front. You let the contractors do a third or half of the work first, give them a payment, and you don't give your final payment until the rehab is done, until the work is done. But probably most importantly, and again, everybody won't do it this way, this is just my personal preference on how I choose to move forward with my business. And it was actually a, I guess, self-rule of mine, or something that I wouldn't do in the first place. And I did it, and it didn't turn out good. Is when it comes to big money work like contracting, doing rehab work, I won't deal with anybody that's close to me as far as family goes or close friends. Because in the end, if anything goes wrong on either party, on either side, if something just doesn't go right, then that relationship can be torn up. And that's exactly what happened with the first contractor doing this job. We actually agreed on some money to be paid back to me for the work that was done incorrectly. I saw a portion of that money, and I haven't heard back from him since. Don't know where he is, don't know what he's doing, and I mean, that's just where we are now. But the kicker is, and I didn't even really find this out until later, is that he had a track record of doing this type of work where the work was subpar or just not completed. But aside from that, it's still a great day to be into real estate. We've got that rental underway. Applicants have been calling back to back about it, so we plan to have it rented soon. The Hoarder House is up next, and I'll post a link to that video. And please, please, please support the page. We're almost at our first 100 subscribers, so subscribe. Definitely thank you to those who have been following me, and I'll see you guys next time.